The senator from North Carolina.
I thank the President, and I thank my good friend and colleague, the senator from Maryland, Senator Mikulski. You know, in the Senate, for those of us that have been around for a while, we understand how it works. And I'm not sure that the media does justice to the American people about how difficult it is for legislation to actually pass the United States Senate. As a matter of fact, the historical threshold of 67 and then 60 in agreement means that if you're a serious legislator and your interest is to work on good policy, not perfect. I think Senator Alexander said, you know, we've never seen a perfect bill. Then the first thought that goes through your mind as you work on a legislative agenda is, who on the other side of the aisle can I get that this would be appealing to from a standpoint of their interest? And two, an individual that understands how to get through difficult times. Well, I'm here to say to my colleagues, Barbara Mikulski is one that fills that category, not just on this, but so much because of her great depth of knowledge and, more importantly, her tenacity and her willingness to tell people no and to pursue what's right, because at the end of the day, I think I can speak for both of us. This is not about headlines. This is about looking at a generation of kids that are going to be benefited by reforms to a reauthorization that hadn't happened since 1996. You know, historical on this issue is that George H.W. Bush started the program, and it was under the Clinton administration, under welfare reform, that we formalized these vouchers. And the vouchers were really created so that families who struggled to keep a job and were low income but had child care needs didn't have to worry about the child care piece, that there was a federal assistance that was determined on a sliding scale. And by the way, let me say for my colleagues, if a state doesn't provide a waiver to a family, then they've got skin in the game on these vouchers. So this is not free across the board. And this has benefited now 1.6 million families. In North Carolina, there's 74,000 vouchers on an annual basis that benefit our children. Those are family members that are either in education or in work, and they can commit to those jobs because child care is available and the cost is affordable because of this federal voucher program. And I think Senator Mikulski would agree with me. We hope we never see a program that waits this long to be reauthorized. Every program up here deserves to be reevaluated every 5 years. One, on its effectiveness. Two, do we still have the problem that we had when the program was started? I dare say in her time here, and she's been here a lot longer than I have, and I don't say that, Barbara, as it relates to your age. There are programs that are still on the books here that don't have a constituency anymore. But the hardest thing for Congress to do is to get rid of something or to consolidate it. And I think that Barbara and I, Senator Mikulski and I, have always taken the attitude, if we can make this better and have a positive effect on the folks it was intended for, then that's our job. That's our responsibility here as members of the United States Senate. So I have certainly looked forward to the 2 years we have spent on an issue that some might listen to the debate today and say, geez, why didn't you just go to the floor and pass it by unanimous consent? Yeah, that's an option. But we also believe that we're not perfect, and that by reaching out to members, our colleagues, and saying, come to the floor. If you can make this bill better, then come to the floor and offer that amendment. If you come to the floor and we think it makes the bill worse, then we're going to vote against you. But we promise you this, we'll have a vote. And that's an important part of the United States Senate, is that members always feel that they can put their fingerprints, they can put their state's interest into every piece of legislation, whether they're on that committee or subcommittee or not. And we have now, with this bill, turned to a process that I think reaches out and incorporates that. Let me say to our colleagues, it's our intent when I get through to start accepting amendments. And at some point, with both leaders' agreements this afternoon, we will target a period where we will vote on whatever stacked amendments we've been able to process. After that, we will hopefully go back in to consider more amendments. And I think it's Senator Mikulski's and my intent not to have votes tonight, but to work with the leaders then to roll those votes to the morning. But let me make this perfectly clear to our colleagues. It is our intent to finish this bill tomorrow afternoon. Period. So, you know, the way to affect positive change in this legislation, to get your input into it and your fingerprints on it, is not to wait until tomorrow afternoon. It's to come down this afternoon. It's to debate the amendments. It's to let us process the amendments. It's to let us work like the Senate is designed to work. So I encourage my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to do that. Madam President, I do rise today to speak about S. 1085, the Child Care Development Block Grant Reauthorization Bill, with my good friend Senator Mikulski. And I must say that we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the cooperation of Senator Harkin and Senator Alexander. Senator Harkin, who has a long history of interest and involvement with policies that affect children. He's passionate about it. Senator Alexander, with a similar lifetime commitment, a gentleman that's served as the Education Governor of Tennessee, the Secretary of Education of the United States, and the President of the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. So both of them come with a tremendous amount of ease and passion for this issue. This legislation is actually necessary to build on what the Child Care Development Block Grants program was established for. As I said earlier, 1.6 million children nationally are served today, 74,000 in North Carolina. And there tends to be a lot of talk in this body about strengthening job training, getting people back to work, and incentivizing self-reliance. I'd like to recommend to my colleagues, that's exactly what the Child Care Development Block Grant does. It says to a family, work, and we'll help you with child care. Get additional education, we'll help you with child care. But one of the problems since 1996, when this bill was created, was that the way we looked at one's income was an instantaneous snapshot. So as a parent, if I was offered a second shift where I could earn a little more money, I'd look at how that might affect my child care voucher and realize that they'd take my voucher away if I took that second shift or if I worked overtime and got time and a half pay. Well, this is evidence that we've looked at all angles. We've reached out to the communities that are affected. We've talked to people who are providers. We've talked to parents. We've looked at the difficulties that they struggle with, because our intent is to make sure that we have a piece of legislation that parents can choose to accept that shift offer, can accept to work in overtime, and know that they're not going to be adversely affected, because now we're looking at the year-long versus the individual snapshot. So through federal vouchers who demonstrate they're working or they're in job training programs or furthering their education and who are below 85% of the state median income are eligible to receive the child care voucher to use that at a child care provider of their choice in their state. Now, this is not one where we're saying you have to go here and you have to go there. We open it up for the choice of the parent. In addition, CDBG requires families, as I said earlier, to have skin in the game on a sliding scale based upon their income. As a block grant, states have great flexibility in how they administer these funds but are generally required to set health, safety, and quality guidelines to promote parental choice, assist parents in becoming independent through work promotion, and provide good consumer information so parents can make decisions about their child's care. S. 1086, the legislation that we've offered, would reauthorize this law for the first time since 1996. It would do so by making some common sense changes that address the realities which I have highlighted. Prioritizing the safety of children who receive care with federal dollars. First, we'd require all providers and individuals who have unsupervised access to children to submit to a criminal background check. That check would ensure that our young children are not left alone with individuals who've committed felonies such as murder, rape, child abuse, neglect, robbery, and other serious offenses. This provision is the result of legislation I introduced over the past several Congresses called the Child Care Protection Act, which I believe will do a great deal to improve the safety of our children. Now, let me just stop there, Madam President, and just say, this is incredible because most Americans, I think, probably believe that these background checks take place today. And to some degree, they're right. States like North Carolina have been responsible, and they do carry out some degree of background checks. Not all states, not all providers, but when this bill becomes law, it will say to all states and to all providers that receive federal vouchers, you must do this. You must assure every parent that these felons are not part of the workforce that have unsupervised access to your children. Second, this bill asks states to monitor through inspections the quality of child care settings so that basic health and safety precautions are taken. Many states currently conduct no checks at all for certain settings and conduct them years apart, all while providers receive state and federal tax dollars. At the very least, parents who are working several jobs just to make it should know that their child is in someone's care who's been trained in the basics of CPR, fire prevention, and other common sense precautions. And let me say, one of my colleagues, Senator Landrieu, I think will come to the floor sometime this afternoon and offer an amendment that requires evacuation plans. Well, for a senator from Louisiana who lived this firsthand, this is a really, really important thing. It's a great job of where a member's amendment is going to help to perfect our bill. And for anybody who's on a coastal state, North Carolina, I'm sorry, I didn't think of exactly what she did. But when you look at tornadoes and you look at fires, we're all susceptible to the need of a daycare facility, an evacuation plan that local officials and, more importantly, parents and the providers that work there understand what to do. Third, it asks states to make transparent all the information as widely as possible so parents are armed with all the information they need when they shop for child care under the federal child care vouchers. Fourth, in keeping with the maximum flexibility afforded to states under the CDBG, this bill provides states the option of seeking waivers from any federal law that funds early learning or child care that might have conflicting or onerous results for the delivery of that care and requires the Secretary of HHS to work with other agencies to provide a waiver for those requirements so states and child care providers can focus on providing quality care, not just complying with Washington's confusing set of requirements. In other words, the focus of this is to make sure that the child care quality component is the single most important feature to providers. Fifth, it promotes continued employment incentives for parents to move higher in their careers by providing better guidance to states on how they determine the eligibility of parents and their children. To me, it's just common sense that we shouldn't penalize a parent from taking an extra shift or working overtime. But at the same time, we require states to make sure that only the most needy parents receive the child care vouchers. And they can demonstrate that they're following the law's work rules. Let me say again, Madam President, because I think this is lost because we haven't talked about this in almost, that for many in the communities that we all represent, this is the difference between a family being able to keep a job or to be 100% on assistance. And what we've got is a federal program that not just is beneficial, we have the data to prove it works. And that matrix continues to be in place. Finally, Madam President, it asks states to place a greater emphasis on building quality care settings by gradually increasing the amount of federal dollars that can be set aside from current law's 4% to 10% over the next several years that must be used to improve quality programs. Let me explain. Today we say that you can set up to 4% aside for quality. We want to extend that. We want to create an incubator that is an investment in what we can do to further enhance the quality of what these children are exposed to. I think Senator Harkin, Senator Alexander, and Senator Mikulski have both pointed out that when we go from infancy to 13, we've got the majority of the learning period of a child's life. And some of it we pick up in the education system, but if they go to child care after that or they go to child care before it, we want to make sure that the quality of that, and more importantly, the innovation of that quality, is such that all students, all children can advance because of it. This bipartisan legislation is the result of work in the Health Committee. It was influenced and really ramrodded by my good friend, Senator Mikulski. Was tireless at inviting experts. She sought practitioners in all of our states, and it was that and the leadership of our chairman and our ranking member that bring us here today. Madam President, I believe this legislation will go a long way towards improving child care in our country, but also towards promoting self-sufficiency and independence for working parents. This is not a federal handout. This is a partnership between the federal government and the opportunity for parents to have a better life. And I think that the way we have addressed the common sense changes in reauthorization make it more likely that more parents will succeed at that. So I encourage my colleagues to support this bill, but I really do stress with my colleagues, now is the time to come to the floor. Bring your amendments to the floor. Let's debate the amendments. Let's vote the amendments. Let's prove that the United States Senate can function in a very open process, because in this particular case, those vulnerable parents and those children that are the next generation really do matter, and what we do really does affect them. I thank the President, I thank my colleague from Maryland, and I yield the floor.